Rain poured in thick, relentless sheets over the quiet town of Pinewood, tapping like impatient fingers on the Wilson family's modest rooftop. Inside the small home, warm lights flickered against the gray gloom of the storm. 4-year-old Ethan Wilson had his nose pressed against the cold windowpane, his breath fogging up a small circle on the glass as he stared out into the swirling storm. Everything about that afternoon seemed normal, until it wasn't. Olivia, his mother, was folding laundry when she noticed Ethan had gone unusually still. His tiny frame was stiff, like he was listening to something beyond the rain. "Ethan?" she asked, drying her hands on a towel. "What is it, sweetheart?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he tilted his head, frowning slightly. "I hear something," he said finally, his voice just above a whisper. Olivia's hands stilled. "You mean the rain?" Ethan shook his head slowly. "No. It's like crying. Not people crying. A dog." His certainty, so strong and clear, sent a small shiver down Olivia's spine. She stepped closer to the window, crouching beside him. Outside was a blow of trees swaying in the wind, but in between the gusts, she thought, no, she felt, something was different. Like the world was holding its breath. The storm's rhythm changed. Then it was again, a low, pitiful sound, barely audible over the rain. She stood up quickly. "Stay here," she said, grabbing a jacket from the hook by the front door. "I mean it, Ethan. Don't move from the porch." But by the time she reached the edge of the front yard, her house slippers already soaked, Ethan was behind her, barefoot in the wet grass. "Ethan," she hissed, but he kept walking. His small steps were purposeful, fearless. At the edge of their yard, where the thin lawn met the forest line, a shape emerged from the underbrush, bold and firm, matted with mud and blood, dragging itself forward slowly. A golden retriever. The dog's body trembled with effort, both hind legs trailing uselessly behind. Its fur was soaked and tangled, leaves stuck to its back. It let out a whimper when it saw them but made no attempt to flee. Olivia's heart clenched. But Ethan, he didn't flinch. "It's okay, Max," he said, his voice soft and steady in a way Olivia had never heard from him. "I'm not going to hurt you. I promise." The dog's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. Its eyes, a deep amber, fixed on the small boy, watching him approach. A low growl started to form, but Ethan just kept walking. "It's okay," he repeated, crouching down slowly, his hand outstretched. "You're safe now." Olivia felt frozen, unable to call him back. Everything about the moment felt surreal, as if time had paused. "Ethan," she whispered urgently. "Please come back. Right now." But her son didn't move. Inch by inch, he crept closer until he was beside the dog. The growl stopped. The retriever's head dipped slightly, and Ethan gently laid a hand on the wet, trembling fur. "I just know," Ethan said softly, as if answering an unspoken question. "His name is Max. He told me. He's been telling me lots of things since I heard him crying." Olivia blinked. "What?" Max let out a whimper again, his eyes closing for a brief second. "We need to get him to a vet," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "Please, Daddy. Please don't let Max die." David, who had just come outside after hearing Olivia shout, looked from his son to the injured animal, torn between disbelief and concern. Olivia gave him a helpless glance. "I'll take Ethan inside and get him dried off," she said quickly. Can you do something for Max?" David nodded slowly, kneeling next to the retriever. "We'll need something to carry him," David said after examining the dog's injuries. "He can't walk, not like this." Minutes later, they had fastened a makeshift stretcher from an old tarp and some wood planks. Together, David and Olivia lifted Max gently onto it. Ethan walked alongside, one hand on Max's head, whispering to him the whole way. "Hang in there, buddy, he murmured. "We're going to make you better. I promise." But as they approached the SUV, Max suddenly tensed. His body stiffened, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. "Whoa, what is it, Max?" David asked, stepping back. Ethan turned and looked toward the trees, his small face suddenly serious. "Someone's watching," he said quietly. "From over there." Olivia followed his gaze but saw nothing, just shadows and falling rain. Still, the chill that ran down her spine felt all too real. They loaded Max into the SUV and drove in tense silence, Ethan refusing to leave the retriever's side. Olivia kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following them, but the road remained empty. At the Pinewood Animal Clinic, they were greeted by a tired but kind-faced woman in a white coat, Dr. Phillips, the town's only veterinarian. Her eyes widened when she saw the dog. "My dog," she said, rushing forward. "Where did you find him?" David gave her the short version as they helped carry Max inside. Ethan stayed by his side the entire time, murmuring comfort, fingers buried in the retriever's thumb. "He says his name is Max," Ethan explained. "And that he used to have a family." Dr. Phillips looked at the boy, then at the dog. "How would you know that?" Ethan didn't blink. "Because he remembers. He remembers everything." Dr. Phillips hesitated. Then she stepped forward, examining the retriever carefully. When her fingers brushed the base of his neck, she froze. "There's something here," she murmured. She retrieved a handheld scanner from a drawer and passed it over the spot. It beeped, but the reading was strange. "That's not a standard microchip," she said, frowning. "It's too large, and it's not where chips are usually placed." Ethan nodded solemnly. "That's the thing the bad men put in him. So they can find him if he runs." Dr. Phillips leaned closer, running her fingers carefully along the base of Max's neck. The lump was distinct, thin, unnatural, and embedded just beneath the skin. Her expression darkened. "This definitely isn't a standard microchip," she said. "And it's not in the right place either. Let me check something." She walked briskly to a drawer, pulled out a handheld scanner, and waved it over the spot. A beep. But instead of displaying a name or identification number, the screen stayed blank. "I've never seen a chip like this before," she said quietly. "It's electronic, but it doesn't register in the usual database." Ethan didn't look surprised. He just kept petting Max's head. "They put that in him so they could trap him," he said softly. "The bad men. It hurts sometimes when it turns on." David and Olivia exchanged a look, not sure how to respond. "You mean, someone did this on purpose?" David asked cautiously. Ethan nodded, never breaking eye contact with the dog. "It was at a place where they make dogs fight each other. The doctor there bids them shots to make them mean." Dr. Phillips looked up sharply. "Wait, what did he say?" Ethan glanced up. "That Max was forced to fight. But he didn't want to. So they broke his legs." The room fell silent. Dr. Phillips stood straight, her face pale. There have been rumors about an underground dogfighting ring in this county for years. But there was never enough evidence to do anything. Ethan stroked Max's fur, whispering gently. "Max can show us where it is. He remembers the way. From the forest to the building where they kept him." "That's not possible," David muttered under his breath. "He's just a little kid." But Dr. Phillips wasn't so sure. She knelt again beside the retriever and looked into his tired, intelligent eyes. "I know this dog," she whispered. "His name really is Max. He belonged to the Millers. He was stolen over a year ago." Olivia gasped. "So Ethan was right?" "Yes," Dr. Phillips confirmed. "The Millers were devastated when Max disappeared. They thought he was dead." David stared at his son, who was still whispering to the injured dog. How? How does he know all this? I don't know, Olivia replied. But he's been talking to Max like they understand each other. And he mentioned Dr. Phillips by name, before we even got here. I never told him about him, David said slowly. Neither had Olivia. Dr. Phillips took a long breath and stood up. We need to operate. That chip, whatever it is, needs to come out, and I need to stabilize the fractures in his legs. Can I stay with him? Ethan asked, his voice quiet but firm. You can wait in my office, she replied gently. It'll take a few hours. But I'll let you know the moment it's done. They laid Max carefully on a gurney and wheeled him into surgery. Ethan stood watching until the door closed, then turned and walked silently to the corner chair in the clinic's waiting room. He climbed into it, curled up with his knees to his chest, and stared at the floor. The hours dragged. Thunder rumbled in the distance as night fell outside the clinic windows. Ethan dozed off and on, sometimes murmuring in his sleep. David and Olivia sat nearby, restless, unable to shake the strange weight of the day. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Dr. Phillips finally emerged, her face lined with exhaustion but her eyes relieved. He made it, she said softly. Max is stable. The chip has been removed, and his legs have been set and splintered. He'll be sedated until morning. We're not leaving, Ethan said immediately, sitting up straight. We promised. Dr. Phillips managed a small smile. You can stay. There's a cot in my office upstairs. You all look like you could use some sleep. They agreed. Too tired to argue, too deeply connected to Max now to consider leaving him behind, they settled into the cramped office. David took the cot. Olivia curled up on a recliner. Ethan lay on the floor beside Max's recovery pen, one small hand reaching through the bars to rest gently on the retriever's fur. By morning, Max's eyes had opened. Though groggy from meditation, he stirred slightly when he saw Ethan. His tail thumped weakly against the padding. Ethan beamed. He's feeling better. His legs still hurt a lot, but he's not scared anymore. Dr. Phillips stepped into the room, carrying a clipboard. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. His vitals are surprisingly good, she said, checking the monitors. Especially considering the trauma he's been through. She paused, watching Ethan and Max for a long moment. I've never seen anything like this, she admitted softly. The way they're connected, it's almost as if they're really communicating. David crossed his arms. Do you think that's even possible? 20 years ago, I would have said no, she replied. But there's still so much we don't understand about animals. Or children. Before anyone could say more, a sound from the front of the clinic made them all freeze. A sharp, sudden knock on the door. Dr. Phillips frowned. We're not open yet. She disappeared down the hallway. A moment later, muffled voices filtered in. When she returned, her face was pale. There's a man asking about a golden retriever that might have been brought in last night, she said, voice low and tense. He says he's from animal control. David stiffened. At this hour? He's very persistent, she added. And he has paperwork. A moment later, the man appeared in the hallway. Tall, sharply dressed, with an air of authority. His name tag read, Lawrence. He held up a folder with a court order clipped to the front. I have the authority to take custody of this animal, he said smoothly. There have been several dog attacks in the neighboring counties. We believe this may be one of the animals involved. That's a lie, Ethan said from behind them. His voice was quiet, but steady. Max didn't attack anyone. You broke his legs because he wouldn't fight. Lawrence froze. He remembers you, Ethan continued. He remembers the white-haired man too. The one who owns the fights. He laughs when the dogs hurt each other. Dr. Phillips stepped in front of Max's crate protectively. We're not handing him over, she said firmly. Not without proper investigation. Lawrence raised an eyebrow. I have a legal order. David stepped forward. And we have a dog with broken legs, an illegal chip, and a child who somehow knows more than you should. Everyone stared at each other in a long, loaded silence. Then David spoke again. We need to go to the police. Dr. Phillips shook her head. They won't help. I tried months ago. Reported suspicious activity. Someone shut it down, someone high up. Olivia looked at David, her voice cracking. Then what can we do? David clenched his jaw, then turned to Ethan and Max. First, he said, we get Max somewhere safe. Dr. Phillips hesitated, glancing from the back door to the hallway where Lawrence had disappeared. My place, she said quietly. I have a cabin by the lake. Remote. No one knows about it. We can take Max there until we figure out our next move. David nodded without hesitation. Let's do it. We'll pack what we need and head out as soon as possible. Ethan turned to Max, his voice full of calm certainty. You're going to be okay now. We're going somewhere safe. They moved quickly. Olivia packed bags with essentials while Dr. Phillips prepared Max for transport. Despite the splints and bandages, Max was alert, his eyes following every movement. When they lifted him onto a padded crate in the back of the SUV, he didn't growl or resist, he just watched Ethan. As the SUV pulled away from the clinic, Olivia glanced nervously at the rearview mirror. No one followed. They drove through back roads and winding forest trails for nearly an hour before reaching the cabin. It was nestled among pine trees beside a quiet, glassy lake. No neighbors. No traffic. Just silence and safety. Dr. Phillips led them inside. It's small, she apologized, but it has heat, food, and a place for Max to rest. It's perfect, David said, helping Ethan carry Max to a rug in front of the fireplace. They settled in. Olivia made tea, David checked the locks, and Ethan curled up beside Max with a blanket. The retriever's breathing had steadied, and his tail thumped faintly against the rug. You were so brave, Ethan whispered to him. But now you don't have to be alone anymore. Later that evening, while Olivia tucked Ethan into a sleeping bag near the fire, David's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, a text from an unknown number. Be careful. They're watching. Don't go home. His stomach dropped. Dr. Phillips saw his expression. What is it? David showed her the message. She nodded grimly. They know you took him. And they're not going to stop until they get him back. That night, Olivia lay awake beside David in the small guest bed, the silence pressing down like a weight. Do you think we're in danger? She whispered. David didn't answer at first. Then he said, I think Max says. And Ethan? Her voice cracked. David turned to look at his sleeping son, curled beside the dog. I don't know what this is, he said softly, but Ethan, he's connected to Max in a way I can't explain. It's like they're thinking the same thoughts. Olivia swallowed hard. It's not normal. No. But maybe it's necessary. The following morning, Ethan woke before anyone else and quietly moved to the window. He stood there for several minutes, then whispered, They're coming. Olivia stirred. What, honey? The bad men, he said calmly. Max says they're getting ready to take all the dogs away. Somewhere far. Where no one can find them. Olivia rushed to the window. Nothing yet. But a storm was building in the distance, clouds turning low and heavy over the trees. Dr. Phillips joined them with a warm mug of coffee. If we're going to stop this, we need help, David said. But not just anyone. I know someone, she replied. Detective Ramirez. She's been quietly looking into this for months. But she's been warned off the case more than once. Call her, David urged. But be careful. Ethan says some of the police are working for Monarch. Monarch? Dr. Phillips blinked. Is that the name? Ethan said he's the one in charge. The man with white hair who comes to watch the dogs fight. She didn't question it. Not anymore. I'll reach out, she said. While she made the call, Olivia brought Ethan into the kitchen for breakfast. David lingered near the door, listening. When Dr. Phillips returned, her expression was tight. She'll come. But unofficially. She said she needs evidence before she can do anything real. Then we get her son, David said. That's too dangerous, Olivia argued. You can't just walk onto someone's property. I'm not going alone, he said. Then he looked at Ethan. And I'm not taking you. But Max remembers the way, Ethan said simply. He says he can show us. There's a red door. Behind the barn. A red door? Olivia repeated. He saw it. When they took him there in the truck. He remembers everything. David placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. That might help, buddy. Ethan suddenly tensed. Wait. We forgot something. He dashed to his backpack and pulled out a sheet of paper and some crayons. Quickly, he sketched a picture, a large red door beneath a sloped roof, and a circle of trees behind it. He held it up. Max wanted me to draw this so I won't forget where it is. Later that afternoon, they loaded back into the SUV and followed Ethan's instructions. The roads became narrower, the trees thicker, the land more secluded. Eventually, they found it. An old farmstead, surrounded by chain-link fencing topped with barbed wire. A farmhouse, a large barn, and, visible from their angle, a red door just where Ethan said it would be. They parked on a hidden side road, far enough not to be seen. Olivia clutched David's arm. Please be careful. We're not going in, he promised. Just a look. Ethan pointed. There's another way. Around the back. It's how they bring the trucks in. David nodded and followed the narrow dirt track. It curved behind the barn and gave them a clear view of the rear entrance. Nothing looked suspicious, until they noticed the heavy ventilation pipes and the faint sound of barking. This isn't just a thorn, David muttered. This is it. Suddenly, Ethan froze. They know we're here, he said. We have to go. Now. A moment later, headlights appeared on the main road. A black SUV blocked the path ahead. David slammed the car into reverse. Hold on. They backed up onto a smaller trail and disappeared into the woods, just as another vehicle turned onto the main road. They didn't speak again until they were well away from the farm. Back at the cabin, Dr. Phillips received a message from Ramirez. She had reviewed the photos David had managed to snap from the back road, vents, fencing, and the red door. This might be enough, Ramirez said. It's not proof yet, but it's a start. But even as they planned their next steps, Ethan suddenly spoke. They're coming tonight, he said softly. Olivia turned. Who is? The bad men, he replied. They're coming to take Max back. And me. Silence. Then David said firmly, we leave. Now. Dr. Phillips nodded. I'll get the truck. My cabin by the lake, it's deeper in the woods. They won't find us then. Within the hour, they were packed again and on the road. As they drove, Ethan looked out at the trees. His voice was distant, dreamy. Max says he's calling them. Calling who? Olivia asked gently. All the dogs, Ethan whispered. The ones like him. They're coming to help. They arrived at Dr. Phillips' deeper, more secluded cabin just as the last light faded behind the trees. The air was damp with the promise of another storm, But here, among the tall pines and quiet lake, it felt safer, at least for now. Max was gently carried inside and placed on a soft quilt near the stone fireplace. Though still weak from surgery and pain medication, his tail thumped the moment Ethan sat beside him. Olivia lit a few lamps while David checked the windows and locks, double-checking everything twice. No one said it aloud, but the sense of urgency hung heavy in the room. Ethan hadn't said much during the drive. He was quiet now too, focused, his hand resting on Max's side. Then suddenly, he sat up straighter, his eyes distant. "They're almost here," he whispered. David turned from the window. "Who?" "The others. Max told them where to find us. They're coming to help." Olivia looked to the door, confused. "What others?" But then they heard it. A bark. Faint. Far off. Then another. Closer. And another. Soon, the forest echoed with the chorus of dogs. Not just one or two, but dozens. Different tones. Different sizes. And all heading toward the cabin. Dr. Phillips opened the door cautiously. And in the moonlight, shadows began to take form, shapes slipping between trees, emerging from the underbrush. Dogs. Hunting dogs, house pets, strays. Golden retrievers. Labradors. Border collies. A massive Rottweiler. Even a few small terriers, all moving in unison, surrounding the cabin silently, as if drawn by an invisible thread. Olivia gasped. "They're really here." Ethan stood at the threshold beside Max, who had lifted his head with effort, ears perked. The injured retriever gave a soft bark, and the crowd of dogs responded with low, eager whines, tails wagging. "They came for him," Ethan said. "But they'll help us too." Dr. Phillips stepped back from the door, stunned. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured. "They coordinated. Like an army." David moved beside her, his voice low. "If Ethan's right, and Monarch is moving the dogs tonight, this might be our only chance." "You're not seriously thinking of going back then?" Olivia asked sharply. "We don't have another option," David replied. "We have photos. We know where the door is. But we still need real proof, something to shut this down for good." "But we can't take Ethan," she insisted. "We can't put him in that kind of danger." "I'm not scared," Ethan said. "That's not the point, honey," Olivia replied quickly. "You're just a little boy." "I'm not just anything," Ethan interrupted, his voice unusually steady. "Max says we have to go. He says they'll move everything before morning. If we wait, we lose them all." Dr. Phillips nodded slowly. "He's right. These operations don't stay in one place for long. If the bad men think they're exposed, they'll disappear." David ran a hand through his hair, sighing. "Then we do it tonight." "Just us," Olivia said firmly. "You, me, and maybe Ramirez. Ethan stays here." But Ethan was already shaking his head. "Max says I have to go. I know where to look. And how to find the red door." Before they could argue further, headlights appeared on the trail. Everyone froze. David reached for the flashlight by the door. But it wasn't Monarch's men. A familiar face stepped out of the town, a woman in a black leather jacket with a badge clipped to her belt. Detective Ramirez. She stepped up to the porch, cautious but alert. "Dr. Phillips?" "We're in here," Phillips called out, relief flooding her voice. Ramirez entered and scanned the room. Her eyes fell first on Max, then Ethan, then the massive dogs visible through the window. "So, everything you said was true?" David nodded. "We have photos. We know where they're keeping them. And if you give us one night, we can get the proof you need." Ramirez didn't answer right away. She looked at Ethan. "You're the boy who found him," she said softly. Ethan met her gaze. "Max says you tried to help his first family." The detective blinked, startled. "Yes," she said. "I did. But I couldn't find him in time." "He says you're one of the good ones," Ethan added. A flicker of something, respect, maybe even awe, crossed Ramirez's face. "You understand the risk, don't you?" she asked David and Olivia. "These men, they don't mess around. They have power. Friends in high places." "We're not trying to confront them," David said. "Just get close enough to document what's happening. Photographs, evidence of the facility. Something you can use." Ramirez turned to the window and looked out at the trees. "Okay," she said finally. "But I'm going with you." "Not officially. I'll be backup. And if anything goes sideways, I'm pulling everyone out." David nodded. "Than. And Ethan stays here," she added. "I can't," Ethan said again. "Max showed me things, paths, turns, where the red door is. You'll get lost without me." Ramirez hesitated, then looked at Dr. Phillips. "Do you believe all this?" The veterinarian took a long breath. "I've been a vet for 20 years. I've seen animals behave in amazing ways. But nothing like this. That boy and that dog are connected. Somehow." A heavy silence followed. Then Ramirez said, "All right. But he stays in the town. If it gets dangerous, he stays out of it." "Deal," David agreed before Olivia could protest again. They moved quickly. Ethan gathered the crayon drawing and tucked it into his coat. Dr. Phillips stayed behind with the dogs and Max, who was too weak to move. As they pulled away from the cabin, dozens of dogs followed, silent, alert, weaving through the woods like shadows. Ramirez watched them in the side mirror. "They know something's happening." Ethan nodded. "They're ready." Back at the farm, the moon had risen high, casting silver light over the twisted fencing and rows of dark windows. They parked behind a thick cluster of trees. The dogs spread out silently, disappearing into the night. David leaned over the seat. "Okay, buddy. You remember the path?" Ethan pointed to the right. "Around the barn. There's a break in the fence. Then the red door." They moved carefully, staying low. Olivia stayed in the tower with Ethan, watching through binoculars. Ramirez and David tripped through the underbrush. Then, a low bark echoed from the far side of the property. Another. Louder. Suddenly, a wild chorus of barking erupted, followed by crashing sounds in the trees. Ramirez ducked. "That's the distraction." "Let's go," David whispered. They sprinted toward the barn, heartbeats thudding in their ears. Behind the building, the red door loomed, just like Ethan's drawing. David reached for his phone and snapped several quick photos: door, pipes, the strange locks. Then they pried it open. What they saw inside made their blood run cold. Cages. Dozens of them. Stacked along the walls. Some were empty. Others held dogs too weak to bark. The smell of blood and bleach hung in the air. "Oh my God," Ramirez muttered, her voice breaking. She raised her phone, taking as many pictures as she could. Then a voice shouted from behind them. "What the hell are you doing?" They turned to see two men running toward them from the side of the property. One of them was Lawrence. Lawrence's voice was sharp and full of authority, but it was laced with something else: panic. The kind of panic that comes when secrets are no longer safe. "Get away from them," he shouted, sprinting across the yard with another man flanking him. Both wore dark jackets, their hands moving toward their waists. Ramirez reacted first. "Run." David didn't hesitate. He turned and bolted, following Ramirez down the narrow corridor outside the barn. Behind them, the thundering footsteps of the two men closed in fast. Ramirez ducked behind a tractor and raised her phone to her mouth. "This is Detective Ramirez. Officer needs assistance. Illegal animal operation in progress. Suspects on scene, requesting immediate backup." No one answered. Only static. "They're jamming communications," she hissed. At the tree-line, Olivia saw everything unfold from the town. She gasped, reaching for the door handle. "Wait." Ethan grabbed her arm. "Max says stay here. We have to trust them." "But they're in danger," she began. Ethan turned toward the forest. "Help them," he whispered. And then, as if summoned by his words, shadows exploded from the trees. Dozens of dogs surged forward in a coordinated rush, barking, growling, and circling the two men. Lawrence and his partner stopped in their tracks. The second man raised a stick, but it was too late. A lean black mutt lunged and bit at his leg. Another dog snapped at his arm, forcing him to retreat. The men fell back, overwhelmed not by violence, but sheer numbers. Ramirez and David used the distraction to double back toward the SUV. "We've got what we need," Ramirez shouted. "Let's go." They piled into the town. Olivia threw the back door open, and Ethan climbed in. "Did you find it?" he asked. Ramirez nodded, her eyes wild with adrenaline. "We found everything." David started the engine and tore down the dirt road, tires spitting gravel into the night. Behind them, the dogs melted into the forest once again. Only one, a brown hound, remained in view, watching them go. Then it turned and disappeared into the trees. They didn't stop until they were miles away, back at the cabin. Inside, Dr. Phillips had prepared a safe room in the basement, just in case. Max lay resting in front of the fire. When Ethan entered, the dog lifted his head and gave a soft, grateful sound. "We did it," Ethan said quietly, resting his hand on Max's fur. "They know now. You don't have to be afraid anymore." David, still catching his breath, turned to Ramirez. "Now what?" "We wait for the others," she said. "Backup is on the way. Once they get the warrant, they'll hit the farm. But Monarch, he won't go quietly. He knows who we are now," Olivia whispered. "We've made ourselves targets." Ramirez looked at them solemnly. "That's why you all need to disappear for a few days. Let me handle the rest." "I can't leave Max," Ethan said. Ramirez smiled faintly. "Then Max comes with you." A few hours later, the backup arrived. 3 unmarked cruisers pulled up the gravel path, each carrying officers Ramirez trusted. She handed them a flash drive with all the images. "Take this to Judge Valera. He's clean." David stepped forward. "We'll head out now. Somewhere quiet. I know a friend with a cabin 2 counties over." "Good," Ramirez said. "Keep your phones off. I'll contact you when it's safe." Before they left, Ramirez knelt beside Ethan. "You're a brave kid," she said. "The bravest I've ever met." Ethan smiled slightly. "Max says thank you." She blinked. "He does. He knows you tried to save him before," Ethan said. "He forgives you." Ramirez swallowed, nodding. "Tell him I'm sorry it took so long." With that, the Wilsons packed what little they had and loaded Max gently into the back of the SUV. Ethan sat beside him, arm around his neck. As they pulled away, Ethan looked out the window at Ramirez and the quiet forest beyond. "We'll come back," he said. "When it's safe." They drove through the night, headlights carving tunnels through misty mountain roads. Hours passed. Trees gave way to open fields. Towns blinked past, sleeping and unaware. Eventually, they reached the second cabin, rustic, tucked in a clearing beside a narrow stream. No neighbors. No cell signal. Only quiet. David carried Max inside and laid him near the hearth. Olivia unpacked while Ethan explored the small porch and looked up at the stars. That night, they sat together by candlelight. Olivia braided Ethan's hair with tired fingers. "You scared me tonight," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "But you were right. About everything." Ethan turned to look at him. "Max told me what to do. He remembers things. Things that help." "You and Max," she whispered. "You really do talk, don't you?" Ethan nodded. "Not with words. Just knowing." The storm passed during the night, and morning brought peace. For a little while. But deep down, they all knew this wasn't over. Somewhere out there, monarchs still moved in the shadows. The forest cabin was so quiet you could hear the wind slide through the branches. Morning mist rolled lazily across the stream behind the cabin. Inside, the Wilsons moved like people in hiding, carefully, quietly, always glancing over their shoulders. Max lay curled on a thick blanket in front of the stone fireplace. His eyes were open more now, tracking every movement, tail thumping slowly when Ethan approached. Despite the pain in his limbs and the wounds still healing, something in his posture had changed. He was no longer afraid. Ethan seemed to draw strength from that. He sat beside the dog for hours, talking softly, his hand never leaving Max's thumb. The two of them looked like they shared a secret the rest of the world couldn't hear. Olivia came over with a bowl of water and a clean towel, gently dabbing at Max's bandaged leg. "Does that hurt, sweetheart?" she asked. Max whimpered softly, but his eyes didn't leave Ethan. "He says it's okay," Ethan translated. "He just wants to get strong enough to help again." Olivia tried to smile, but the worry never left her eyes. She looked to David, who was standing near the window, scanning the woods. "Do you think they'll find us?" she asked. "Not easily," David said. "I didn't tell anyone the location. Not even Ramirez. She said she'd call when it was safe," Olivia whispered. "Yeah," David replied. "But what if it's never safe?" No one answered. That night, a cold front moved in, and rain began to fall. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and constant, like a warning. Ethan woke in the middle of the night and sat up suddenly, heart pounding. Max was already alert, his head raised, ears twitching toward the window. "What is it?" Ethan whispered. The dog didn't growl. Didn't bark. But his body stiffened, muscles tensing as he stared into the darkness. "They're watching," Ethan murmured. "Someone's here." He slipped out of the sleeping bag and padded silently to the front door. Olivia stirred and opened her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered sharply. David was already up, quietly loading a pistol and moving to the front of the cabin. Olivia rushed to Ethan's side. "Don't open that door," she said. "I'm not," Ethan replied. "But Max says someone's out there. Not one of the good ones." David peered through a narrow crack in the curtains. A black sedan sat at the edge of the tree line. No headlights. Just a dark shape watching. "It's them," he said grimly. "They found us." "How?" Olivia whispered. "How could they?" "The trapper," David said. "The one they put in Max. They'd forgotten about the device embedded beneath Max's skin, the one Dr. Phillips had scanned but hadn't yet removed. "We need to move," he said. "Now." "No time," Olivia replied. "They'll be on us before we get 5 miles down the road." Ethan looked up, calm despite the storm brewing outside. "We don't need to run," he said. "Help is already coming." "What do you mean?" David asked. "Max called them," Ethan said. "All the others." Again. Thunder cracked above the cabin. The wind howled. And then, from the woods, came a single, distant bark. Then another. Then a whole chorus. David moved to the back porch and stared into the trees. Shapes began to emerge from the darkness. Dogs. Just like before, but even more this time. Larger breeds, smaller mutts, old hounds and young rescues, all moving as one. The sound of the rain couldn't drown out the rising chorus of growls and howls. They know the scent, Ethan said, moving beside Max. They know who hurt him. At that moment, headlights snapped on behind the black sedan. Another vehicle pulled up behind it. Two men stepped out, one tall with silver hair, the other broader with a rifle slung across his back. "It's Monarch," David whispered, eyes narrowing. "That's him." They didn't make a move toward the cabin. Not yet. But they were waiting. And watching. David picked up the phone to try Ramirez again, but there was still no signal. "We have to hold them off until morning," Olivia said. "We just need a few more hours." Max rose shakily to his feet. "Max, no," Olivia tried to stop him. But the Baldwin retriever walked slowly toward the door, his body trembling but his expression calm. "He wants to face them," Ethan said. "He wants them to see he's not afraid anymore." David looked at his son, torn between fear and awe. "You stay inside, Ethan. No matter what." "I will," Ethan promised. "But Max won't be alone." Moments later, the forest erupted. The dogs surged toward the road, forming a wall of fang and teeth between the cabin and the black sedans. The two men shouted commands, but it was too late. The dogs didn't attack, they surrounded. Blocked. Intimidated. The men tried to retreat. One fired a warning shot into the air. It did nothing. From a hilltop behind the cabin, new lights appeared, red and blue flashing strobes bouncing through the trees. A convoy of police cruisers and unmarked vehicles poured down the access road. Ramirez was at the front, stepping out with a megaphone in one hand and her badge in the other. "Drop your weapons and surrender," she shouted. Monarch didn't move. But the man beside him did. He raised his rifle. A split second later, Max lunged forward from the cabin, snarling with a fury none of them had seen before. He hit the man squarely in the chest, knocking him backward. Monarch turned to flee, but Ramirez and two officers were already on him. "Alexander Monarch," she shouted, "you're under arrest for animal cruelty, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and operating an illegal fighting ring." Handcuffs clicked shut. Max, panting and shaky, returned to the porch. Ethan rushed to meet him, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. "You did it," he whispered. "You're free now." As dawn broke over the horizon, the rain stopped. The dogs scattered into the woods, returning to wherever they had come from. But Max stayed. So did Ethan. Inside the cabin, the Wilson family collapsed onto the floor, exhausted and trembling, but safe. Ramirez entered with a half smile. "It's over," she said. David looked at her. "Really?" She nodded. "We got everything we needed. And thanks to you, we'll be shutting down every one of Monarch's operations across the state." Ethan leaned his head against Max's shoulder. "He says he wants to stay with us now." Ramirez smiled. "I think that can be arranged." Outside, the sky turned a soft gold. A new day had begun. The days that followed were unlike anything the Wilsons could have imagined. Once the dust settled and the headlines began to roll, their quiet family life transformed into something far more public and far more complicated. News crews lined the front of the police station in Pinewood. Words like miracle, hero, and animal whisperer flashed across national broadcasts. Photos of Ethan and Max appeared on magazine covers, websites, and television screens. Everyone wanted to hear the story of the little boy who saved a broken golden retriever, and uncovered an entire criminal enterprise in the process. But for the Wilsons, none of that mattered. Not really. What mattered was that Max was healing. What mattered was that their son was safe. And what mattered most of all was the unspoken connection that had changed all their lives. "We can't go back to normal," Olivia said one morning, sitting at the breakfast table with a mug of untouched coffee. "Not after this." David, reading yet another article online, nodded. "I don't think we're meant to." Ethan came into the room with Max trotting behind him. The retriever still limped slightly, but he looked stronger with each passing day. "Max wants to visit the others," Ethan said. "The other dogs?" David asked. Ethan nodded. "The ones that were rescued. He wants to help them feel better." David looked at Olivia. "I mean, should we?" Olivia hesitated. "If the vet clears it, I don't see why not. And honestly, it might help Ethan too." A few days later, they returned to the rehabilitation center where many of the rescued dogs had been taken. It was a peaceful, sprawling property run by a rescue organization that had quickly stepped in after the raids on Monarch's properties. The moment Max stepped onto the grounds, something incredible happened. Dozens of dogs, some limping, some scarred, others trembling with anxiety, lifted their heads and watched. And then, one by one, they came forward. Max greeted them all gently, with slow tail wags and soft nose touches. No growling. No fear. Just quiet understanding. Ethan stood among them like he belonged there. He knelt beside a skittish husky mix and whispered something. The dog leaned closer. Another came over. Then another. Volunteers and staff wedged in on. "That boy," one of them whispered, "he's doing more for these dogs in 5 minutes than we've managed in weeks." Dr. Phillips, who had joined them for the visit, smiled softly. "It's not just Ethan. It's Max too. They're a team." A woman with a clipboard approached Olivia. "Are you Ethan's mother?" "Yes. I'm Susan," she said. "Director here. Listen, we don't normally ask this of families, especially ones with young kids, but would you consider coming back? Ethan could really help the recovery process. And Max, of course." Olivia looked at her son, kneeling now with 4 dogs around him, all tongue, all watching him like he was their center of gravity. She turned to David. "What do you think?" He smiled. "I think we already know the answer." They started coming weekly. Then twice a week. Eventually, Susan offered the Wilsons a small cottage on the property, a place to stay, to rest, and to help. Ethan loved it. Max loved it even more. Word spread fast, and soon, more than just injured dogs arrived. Families with troubled pets came for advice. Children with trauma bonded with the rescued animals. Therapists and trainers observed Ethan and Max quietly, taking notes but never interfering. There was something sacred about what the boy and the dog shared, something no science could fully explain. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Ethan sat beside Max under an old oak tree. A small girl, maybe 6 or 7, approached with hesitant steps. She had a cane and a long scar running down her cheek. She stopped a few feet away, eyes on Max. "He won't hurt you," Ethan said gently. "He remembers what it feels like to be scared." The girl blinked. "Can I pet him?" Max wagged his tail and took a few slow steps forward, lowering his head. The girl reached out and touched his thumb. Then knelt beside him. "See?" Ethan whispered. "He knows you're strong too." Tears welled in her eyes. She leaned into Max's side, and he licked her hand. From across the yard, Olivia watched. She took David's hand. "He's going to be okay," she said. David nodded. "Better than okay." That night, as they walked back to the cottage, Ethan looked up at the stars. Max says more dogs are coming, he said. Olivia smiled. Really? He says they'll always find us, Ethan replied. Because they know we listen. They reached the porch, and Max stopped, sniffing the air. His ears twitched, then relaxed. He turned and looked at Ethan, tail swaying gently. You want to stay here forever, don't you? Ethan asked. Max licked his face in reply. From behind them, David opened the front door. Time for bed, buddy. Okay, Ethan said, patting Max's side. They stepped inside together. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. News of what happened in Pinewood didn't fade away quietly. Instead, it grew, spreading from local papers to national outlets, from rescue forums to evening news segments. People all over the country were talking about the little boy who could talk to dogs, and the golden retriever who had survived what should have broken him. Ethan and Max had become symbols, not of tragedy, but of healing. But while the world buzzed with fascination, the Wilson family tried their best to keep things simple. They continued living in the small cottage provided by the rescue center. Ethan spent his days surrounded by animals, whispering to them, comforting them, and learning from them. Max was always by his side, stronger every day, his once broken body now carrying only a slight limp as a reminder of what he'd endured. Dr. Phillips made regular visits, not just to check on Max's physical recovery, but to observe what she called the bond. It's more than empathy, she said one morning as she watched Ethan calm a trembling pit bull with a few gentle strokes. It's not just kindness. It's something else. Do you think it's psychic? David asked, only half joking. She didn't smile. I think whatever it is, it's real. And I think we're only beginning to understand it. A few days later, the doorbell rang. That was unusual, most people knocked. David opened the door to find a woman standing there, dressed in a crisp navy suit and holding a leather folder. I'm Dr. Helena Moore, she said. I'm with the Institute for Interspecies Communication Research. May I come in? David blinked. You're with, what now? Helena smiled politely. We study human-animal bonds. Your son has drawn considerable interest. We're not looking for attention, Olivia said as she came to the door. I understand, Dr. Moore said. I'm not here to exploit him. I'm here to help, if you want it. What Ethan has, it's rare. And if he's willing, we'd love to conduct a few non-invasive studies. Nothing medical. Just observation. David looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at Ethan, who stood beside Max with a curious expression on his face. He says you're okay, Ethan said quietly. Dr. Moore raised her eyebrows. Max doesn't smell fear or lies on you, Ethan added. That made her laugh softly. Well, I suppose I've passed the interview. The Wilsons agreed to allow Moore and her team to visit once a week. They kept it small, controlled, and always on Ethan's terms. And as the sessions progressed, even the most skeptical researchers began to take notice. One afternoon, Moore sat in a folding chair under a tree, watching Ethan as he worked with a traumatized German short-haired pointer named Daisy. She wouldn't let anyone near her when she arrived, one of the handlers whispered. Bit two of our staff and nearly chewed through a door. But with Ethan, Daisy was calm. She sat beside him now, breathing slowly, her head in his lap. He says she was locked in a crate for a long time, Ethan murmured. She was afraid if she made noise, they'd hit him. Moore's assistant took notes furiously. And he says she wants to try again, Ethan added. To trust. Later, in a debriefing with the Wilsons, Moore looked at them thoughtfully. Most children who grow up around animals develop a sense of compassion, she said. But Ethan's different. He doesn't just feel what they feel, he knows. Can it be taught? Olivia asked. Moore hesitated. Not like this. I don't think this is something you can learn. I think it's something you're born with. David leaned forward. What does that mean for him? Moy sighed. It means he's special. And it also means he'll need protection. Because not everyone who hears about him will have good intentions. They all knew she was right. The press inquiries had started again. People wanted interviews. Some wanted to fund a documentary. One strange letter even offered Ethan a guest appearance on a reality show about gifted children. David and Olivia shut it all down. Ethan is not a sideshow, Olivia snapped at one particularly persistent producer. He's a child. A kind, brilliant, empathetic child. Leave him alone. But not everyone could be ignored so easily. One evening, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Olivia's stomach sank as she watched it from the kitchen window. David stepped outside, cautious. The man who emerged was tall, clean-cut, and had an official badge clipped to his belt. "Mr. Wilson," he said. "I'm Agent Crowley with the FBI. We need to talk." David didn't answer immediately. Crowley continued. "This isn't about you. It's about Monarch. He's gone into hiding, and the case isn't closed." "He's dangerous," David said. "I know. But your son, Ethan, he's the only one who made contact with those dogs. They followed his lead. That kind of connection, it could help us track Monarch down." David shook his head. "You want to use my son as bait?" "No," Crowley said quickly. "But if we could just talk to him, get any details, locations, names, behaviors, it could help us bring down the rest of the ring." Monarch had partners. Investors. This isn't just about dog fights, it's about organized crime. David crossed his arms. "I'll ask Ethan. But if he says no, that's the end of it." "I understand," Crowley replied. "You're good parents. Just, let me know." That night, David and Olivia sat Ethan down and explained everything. He was quiet for a long time. Max rested his head in the boy's lap and let out a deep, soft sigh. "I don't want to go looking for Monarch," Ethan said. "But I think Max remembers more. I'll ask him." He looked at his parents. "If it helps stop other dogs from getting hurt, we should try." David nodded slowly. "Only if you feel ready." "I think we are," Ethan said. He looked at Max. "We've got more work to do." It started with a quiet conversation under the oak tree, Ethan and Max, sitting in the tall grass as the breeze stirred the leaves overhead. From a distance, they looked like any child and his loyal dog. But up close, the energy between them was electric. Focused. Intent. "He remembers the smells," Ethan said as David and Agent Crowley listened nearby. The sound of the truck engine. The music the driver played. The way the dirt road curved before they reached the place. Crowley leaned forward. "Can he show us a direction?" Ethan nodded. "He doesn't know a name. But he can lead us." "He's sure." Crowley exchanged a look with David. "That's more than we ever had." In the following days, the FBI arranged for an off-the-books operation. Nothing official. No lights, no badges, no uniforms. Just two agents, a trapper, and the Wilson family, along with Max and two dogs from the rescue team trained for scent work. They followed Max's lead. From the open countryside to forgotten side roads, from gas stations to dirt paths nearly lost to overgrowth, Max guided them without hesitation. Ethan rode with him in the back seat, one hand on his fur the whole time. "He says it's close," Ethan murmured as they approached a large stretch of farmland, seemingly abandoned. It looked like nothing special, an old barn, a rusting silo, a weathered house with boarded-up windows. But the dogs knew. As soon as the car doors opened, they stiffened, ears perked, noses high. "This is it," Crowley said. They waited until nightfall. The team split into two groups, one circling the perimeter, the other approaching the barn. Inside, they found exactly what they feared: cages, chains, bloodstains, evidence of recent use. But it was empty. Monarch was gone. Ethan stood in the doorway, Max beside him. "He knew we were coming," Ethan whispered. "But he left something behind." He pointed to a small trapdoor near the back wall. It opened to reveal a hidden basement, and inside it, a room full of documents, photos, computer drives. "Jackpot," one agent said. Crowley looked at Ethan in disbelief. "How did you know?" "Max did," Ethan replied. "He remembers the smell of the man who came down here. He knew this is where they planned things." Over the next week, that evidence would lead to several arrests across 3 states. Monarch's name surfaced in a dozen financial documents. His network began to unravel. Still, the man himself remained missing. But they weren't done. Ethan began to dream more vividly at night. His connection with Max seemed to intensify. He spoke of places he'd never seen: warehouses, boat docks, long white hallways with barking echoing through them. "He's seeing through Max's memories," Dr. Phillips explained. "The trauma might have etched those images deep into his mind. And now Ethan is pulling them forward." "But it's not just memories," Olivia said. "It's like visions." David agreed. "Ethan told me about a black and white sign with a broken E on it, and one of the agents just confirmed that exact logo exists on an old factory in Louisiana. One Monarch bought through a shell company 2 years ago." Crowley's team followed that lead, and found another abandoned facility. More cages. More signs of violence. But again, no Monarch. That didn't stop them. Ethan insisted Max would know when it was time. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Ethan came to the dinner table looking pale. "He's ready," he said. David put down his fork. "Max?" Ethan nodded. "He says Monarch's hiding in the mountains. Somewhere cold. There's a fire smell. Pine trees. Big trucks going back and forth." Crowley was contacted immediately. "We've had reports of a private hunting compound in northern Montana, land owned by one of Monarch's known associates," the agent said. "It fits." They mobilized fast. This time, Ethan stayed behind. He insisted. "He says it's not safe. Max needs me here. But the other dogs will help." 3 of the rehabilitated dogs, each one once broken, now confident and alert, joined the FBI raid. In the snowy silence of Montana's deep forest, the operation moved like shadows. At the edge of a clearing, they found the compound: electrified fences, security cameras, and tall towers with spotlights. But no guards. Just silence. Until the dogs began to bark. The team breached the compound and found Monarch in a bunker beneath the main lodge, cornered, and alone. "It's over," Crowley said as Monarch was handcuffed. "You think I'm the only one?" Monarch sneered. "You think this ends with me?" Crowley didn't reply. He just pulled out a photo. It showed Ethan and Max sitting in a field of wildflowers, smiling. Monarch's expression changed. "You afraid of a kid?" he scoffed. Crowley smiled slightly. "No. I'm afraid of how many others are going to follow him." Back in Pinewood, the news spread fast. Ethan watched the report quietly, one hand on Max's back. "It's done," David whispered. "Not yet," Ethan said. "There's still more to fix. More dogs to help. But he's not going to hurt anyone else." Max rested his head in Ethan's lap. Olivia came in from the porch, tears in her eyes. "You're safe," she whispered. "You did it." Ethan looked up. "No, we did." As night fell, the stars came out one by one. And someone in the darkness, 100 quiet voices, barks, howls, whimpers, seemed to echo in gratitude. Weeks passed. The snow that once dusted the hills around Pinewood melted into soft breaths. Spring arrived gently, bringing warmth to the land and healing to the wounds left behind. At the rescue center, life had settled into a new rhythm. Ethan spent each morning walking the grounds with Max beside him. Dogs followed them wherever they went, some still nervous, some full of energy, some quiet with old pain, but all of them drawn to the same boy whose presence meant safety, calm, hope. The media attention eventually faded, as it always does. The news cycle moved on. But those who mattered most, the dogs, the families who adopted them, the people whose lives were changed, never forgot. One Saturday afternoon, the Wilsons hosted a small gathering at the rescue center. It wasn't for press or publicity. Just people who understood. Among the guests were the Millers, Max's original family. They had driven 6 hours to see him again. The reunion was bittersweet. Max wagged his tail softly when he saw them, his eyes gentle, as if remembering something distant and half-dreamed. The Millers cried openly as they knelt beside him. "We never thought we'd see him again," Mrs. Miller whispered. "He still loves you," Ethan said simply. "But he belongs here now." Mr. Miller nodded. "We know. And we're just grateful he's alive." They left that evening, leaving behind a donation to the center and a photo of Max as a puppy, now framed and placed on the mantel in the main lodge. That night, Ethan sat by the lake with Max, watching the moonlight shimmer on the surface. "He says he misses them," Ethan said. "But he's happy." Olivia came to sit beside them. "Are you happy too, sweetheart?" Ethan nodded. "I like helping. I like listening. The dogs, they're still hurting. But they're getting better." David joined them, wrapping an arm around both. "I still don't understand how all this happened," he said softly. "You don't have to," Olivia replied. "You just have to believe it did." Max raised his head and let out a soft, contented bark. It felt like agreement. Later that week, Dr. Phillips approached the Wilsons with a quiet proposal. "We want to start a program," she said. "Something long-term. A foundation in Ethan and Max's name. For therapy animals. For kids with trauma. For families struggling to connect with their pets." Olivia smiled. "You mean something permanent?" Phillips nodded. "Something that doesn't just treat symptoms, but builds bridges, between species, between hearts." David looked at Ethan. "What do you think, buddy?" Ethan looked at Max. "He says, it's time." And so it began. The Max and Ethan Foundation launched quietly but quickly gained support. Donations poured in. Trainers, therapists, and behaviorists volunteered their time. People from all over the country reached out, wanting to learn, to help, to witness what was possible when you truly listened. Ethan never asked for recognition. Neither did Max. They just kept showing up. One dog at a time. One life at a time. Years passed. Ethan grew taller, older, but never outgrew his connection to animals. And Max, though slowed by age, remained his shadow, his compass, his partner in everything. When the old golden retriever finally passed, it was quiet. Peaceful. In Ethan's arms. No one spoke for a long time. But Ethan, older now, eyes wiser, stood up and looked at the circle of dogs gathered around them. "He's still here," he said. "He always will be." And the dogs seemed to understand. From that moment on, Ethan never stopped. He carried Max's legacy forward, not just through the foundation, but through the lives he continued to touch. He became the boy who listened. The boy who helped. The boy who reminded the world that miracles don't always come with lightning or grand speeches. Sometimes, They come quietly. On four legs. With golden fur. And eyes that say, I understand. Back at the cottage by the lake, the wind rustled the trees. A child's laughter echoed through the pines. And somewhere in the breeze, a bark, gentle, strong, and familiar, carried on the air. A reminder that love, once given, never truly fades. It just finds a new way to speak.